Line's good.
Never on.
Whoa.
Hard. Hardly.
Come on, Brent.
Line's good.
Got real close.
The hair high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham Scott, alongside, as per usual.
As per usual. That's well said, Sean. Well said.
How do you do, Scott?
I do well.
That's good.
There's a big event coming up
Yes.
that I'm pretty stoked for because I'm going to be there in person, and it's the Tim Hortons Brier.
Yes, the Tim Hortons Brier, the 2020 Brier in Kingston, Ontario. We're so excited about it that we came back to the Ottawa Curling Club for the second night in a row to talk about it.
We can't stay away, Sean.
We really can't. So we're back to preview the Brier in Kingston. So this is quite interesting, Scott. We went to the the Scotties in Kingston.
That's right.
Way back, I want to say 2013.
You would be correct.
When it was there. And there's a lot to like about Kingston, Ontario. And where the arena is, it's close to downtown. You can walk. They have an outdoor arena, or at least ice pad there in the downtown. Some really cool restaurants, a couple really nice breweries. I think the arena's great. I think it's really good sight lines.
Yeah.
It's small-ish. Like, it's big enough for a Brier, but small enough that you're never going to feel too disconnected from the games. You know, especially remember one side, you're right on top of the play, which is usually the case in these smaller venues. So a really good venue. The only downside in 2013 was that the Heartstop Lounge was a little too far away from the arena. You had to take a bus. Wasn't a great atmosphere there. So this year they're doing a tent, an outdoor tent,
All right.
next to what is now, I think, the Leon Center.
That's right.
And that should be a lot of fun. So just walking distance, that's a key. I think they've learned that over the years, that fans want to just be able to walk from the venue into the lounge.
Yes, an outdoor tent is fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. It'll be great. We are expected to get a big dump of snow Wednesday night into Thursday here in Eastern Ontario. It might be warm enough that it stays rain down there in Kingston, but I hope it doesn't hamper the construction of this tent too much.
Yeah, hopefully not. Yeah, those outdoor tents can be a little fickle at times, and hopefully it doesn't disrupt the travel of any of the teams as they come in. A lot will be coming in Wednesday and Thursday.
Well, they'll probably be flying into Ottawa, right?
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, it makes sense given that Pearson's sort of on the west side of the city. It's an easier drive than from Pearson. So maybe some of them will be flying into the nation's capital and heading down from here. But we have a loaded field. We talked about it with the Scotties last week. It was a loaded field. This also a very loaded field, evidenced by the fact that Glenn Howard will be one of the wildcard participants. He is the 9th ranked team in the country. So that means that the 8 top teams in the country are in the field, with the exception, I guess, of Mike McEwen, who's the other participant in the wildcard game. But that's crazy that all these top teams are going to be in this field.
Yeah.
So I want to start, Scott. We'll talk about each of the teams, but I'm curious. Out of the 16, let's say, out of the 17 teams who will be participating, let's not treat wildcard as a singular entity just yet.
Okay.
Out of the 17 teams who are going to Kingston this week, how many do you think have a chance to win the event out of the 17?
A legitimate chance to win?
Yeah, that your jaw would not be on the floor if this particular team won. Like, how many of those exist for you?
I would say 6.
Okay, who are
those
they?
teams.
Who are they?
Brad Jacobs.
Yep.
Brendan Botcher. Brad Gushu.
Yeah.
John Epping. Kevin Cooey.
Yes.
And the 6th would be Mike McEwen if they win the wildcard game.
Okay.
My jaw would not be on the floor if they won. I would be surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked.
Okay. I think that's fair. I would also add Matt Dunstone to that list. I think they have a chance to win in this event too. And I really, really, really want to say BC as well. And Jim Cotter. I think that's a little tougher to see that.
I think they're championship pool caliber, but maybe not winner capable.
Yeah. So however you put it forth, you have at least. I think the 6 that you identified. I think everyone would agree on that. I don't think you're going to get a lot of pushback on Matt Dunstone either. I think there is even a gunner camp in there potentially as well.
I'll tell you that'd be fun.
It would be super fun if it was gunner. But you have 7, maybe 8 teams going into an event that legitimately have a chance to win. And if you counter that with early 2010s or late aughts
Oh, yeah.
Briers, where it was Martin and Howard and Stoughton and Gushu, and everyone else was playing for 5th place.
Yeah.
That is not the case this week. This is a wide open field. There is going to be some bloodshed.
Yeah.
Hopefully not literally. I don't think that either of the pools is as stacked as what we saw with that Pool A at the Scotties, where you were guaranteed to have one team that was a legit playoff threat miss.
Right.
That was guaranteed because you had 5 really good, legitimate playoff threats. I think in both of these pools, they're pretty well structured that you have your top 4 in each, and it's going to take some work. I think Pool A in this one is a little stronger, again, just by the nature of the way the seeding works, that, with Jim Cotter potentially. So we'll see how it flushes out. But in terms of how this is all going to break down, Scott, you are going to have teams that in other years, in normal, quote-unquote normal years, are not going to make the playoffs who legitimately could win this event. That's how deep this field is. That's where we are in men's curling. Now, you could make an argument that the reason that all these teams are here is because there's not a lot of depth across the country, so you don't have the provincial depth that we maybe used to have, or at least provincial parity. But I don't care.
Right.
This event's going to be awesome.
And this is the one that's on TV, so this is the one that we all want to watch, right? I was thinking of while you were talking there, I have to edit Wikipedia because they've flipped the pools around. It's just insane. But we also had that period, middle of the 2010s, where it was the same 4 teams that made the playoffs, I think, at least 3 years in a row.
Yeah, and it was
Gushu, Cooey, McEwen, and who am I missing?
Jacobs.
And Jacobs, yeah.
And, that was leading into the trials, the 3 years leading into the trials.
Yeah.
And then at the trials, it was Gushu, Jacobs, McEwen as the 3 playoff teams. So, there was
Not Jacobs.
Cooey. Of course, because he won the thing.
Cooey, Gushu,
of course he
and
made the playoffs.
McEwen.
And so you did see that concentration at the top.
Yeah.
You do wonder. I mean, last year was kind of the same with that to a certain degree in terms of the playoffs. So you wonder, even in this deep field, will those be the teams that rise up now?
Will there be any breakthroughs into that Final Four? Fab Four, as Vic called them for the Scotties there. You wonder, right? So it's going to be pretty good. I agree with you. Both pools are pretty well balanced. And I think in both pools, you could see that 4th spot being fought over a bit. But to me, there are 4 clear teams in each pool. And if one of them fell back to maybe a tiebreaker, it would be a bit surprising, but it would be welcome. Like, it would be understandable.
Yeah, and I think what'll be interesting, too, is if you have a situation like, obviously it didn't really hurt Krista McCarville, where she loses to Team Nunavut, right? If if any of these top teams have a game where they're losing to a team that is below them in the rankings, that, because it's going to be so hard, those 3 games, other 3 games against the top teams in your pool, and then obviously the 4 games in the championship pool, you really probably can't afford to have a loss against a team that you quote unquote should beat. And I also think, because this field's so deep, I think 4 will get you something this week. I think the teams are just going to beat each other up a bunch.
Yeah.
And I think 7 and 4, if you can get through this at 7 and 4, I think you'll probably get something, which we haven't seen in this format. But again, we haven't seen this depth of field in the format either.
And I would have said that
at the Scotties
as well for the Scotties, but we saw sort of the cream really rise to the top, where we had a pretty deep field, but we saw 3 teams just stand out and finish at 9-2. So
Yeah.
if we get something like that at the Brier, I would be more surprised for that, right? Because, like I said at the beginning, I saw 6 teams that have a chance to win, and like 5 for sure, depending on this outcome of the wild card game. So, yeah, I'm really excited for this. Do you want to dive right in?
Yeah, let's get into it. Let's start with that wild card game Friday night. Glenn Howard against Mike McEwen. Both teams coming off losses in the provincials, obviously. The Mike McEwen loss in the final against Jason Gunlison, we talked about it at the time. It was a tough watch. The communication within the team didn't seem that great, and they seem really defeated by the ice. Not a lot of confidence in that game. Mike McEwen missed shots that Mike McEwen doesn't miss.
Yeah.
Very surprising there. And after their Brier performance last year, where they were also somewhat underwhelming, they've had better results on tour this year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But then on the other hand, Glenn Howard is still great.
Yeah.
Still a great player. I think what is missing from Glenn Howard, as just Glenn Howard right now, is he's 0.5% less precise, especially on the hits.
Mm-hmm.
When you watch him now, and against top teams, 0.5%, 0.25% is really where you're gonna lose games. Sometimes.
Yeah.
So he still makes playoffs at slams. He's still competitive. He's still in there, but he's not at the level that he was 10 years ago.
Very few of us are.
And when you could definitely book him into the 1-2 game at the start of the week, and you're just like, Howard Martin,
right? And
you were just waiting for it, and it was so much fun.
Yeah.
Now the team around him, I think you can make a case. Scott's good, Mathers is good. Tim March, they're all good, but they're also not Saville, Lang, and Hart.
No,
right?
No.
And that's hard. Those are 3 Hall of Fame guys.
Yeah,
and
it's really 4 Hall of Fame guys, right, with the whole team.
Yeah,
and now
that's one of the greatest teams ever.
It's in the conversation. Yeah,
and so to hold Glenn Howard in 2020 to that standard of that was one of the greatest team ever is super unfair.
Sure.
He's still number 9 in Canada in points. They still are competitive. They don't really get blown out that much, if at all. And I think McEwen has the edge in this game, but Glenn Howard is too good to say no chance.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to be rooting for Glenn Howard to be in this field because as somebody who wants to watch a lot of games, I think it'll be more fun to watch Glenn Howard's team than to watch Mike McEwen.
Yeah, I agree.
Does that, even if they lose more?
Yep.
I just think it's fun to watch. He's very honest on the mic, even if he does think a lot of rocks pick. But
just clean it. That's why you got brooms, man.
I think the thing you mentioned about the hits being just that much less precise, it really comes through in this era at this level.
Yes.
Right? Because all the other skips can throw the runbacks to blank ends, and Glenn Howard can do that, but he doesn't throw hard weight as accurately as he did. And he was never really a big weight
That
thrower.
was never his thing, right? He was always board weight.
Yeah.
Right? That's where he killed you.
Yeah.
With board weight. And, I mean, the obvious famous exception to that is against Joel Jordanson, that Brier shot, which you haven't seen. I want to say it's 07, 08.
It's the triple for...
To win the game.
Yeah.
It's the angles of it are crazy. He had that in his repertoire.
Sure.
I mean, that's one of the craziest shots that I've ever seen. But... yeah, he doesn't have it at that level anymore. But as you say, that was never really his strength. So that's where it's going to be really important, obviously on Friday, but if they get into the field, for Dave Mathers and Scott Howard to, when they need to bail, when they need to clean up, they're going to have to do it. That's the key for this team, that Glenn has those shots where the fine touch that he has, that's what he's throwing all the time.
Right.
Because that's where they will kill you.
And so their bailout point might be, one shot earlier than most teams.
Yeah.
But if they're doing that, like Mathers is very accurate with the upweight.
Yeah.
He throws it really hard and really straight. Scott is pretty good at that as well. I'd say like Dave Mathers is the best on the team at the big weight peel runbacks.
Yeah.
But that's what's going to happen for this team to be successful is to bail at the right time, not get into too much trouble, and be able to capitalize when the other team makes mistakes. And I think against MacEwan, they'll have those opportunities.
I agree. And for everything that I've said about Dave Mathers, he is technically one of the best throwers that you'll ever see. Like if you want to, if you learn by watching. Watch Dave Mathers throw a curling rock. It is very impressive. Mm-hmm. Just straight out at the broom. Like it is so clean the way he throws. Glenn too, right?
Oh, maybe the purest, right?
Yeah. So really technically really good players, which is shocking that they get so many picks because they're so good at throwing. But a really good team. So I think what the benefit would be too if they make it into the pool in winning. The wildcard team gets ranked, it appears, based on the highest ranking team.
Yeah.
So they would be ranked third in the field, which I think, Scott, is overall maybe a tougher pool, but less top heavy than Pool B. So being in Pool A, if they get in, I think that might be a bit of an advantage for Glenn Howard and that team. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. On the other hand, Mike MacEwan, if he gets in, I think the key for them will be to, be more Krista McCarville, and just don't get so high, don't get so low.
Right.
It's a really long week. Just be calm. We'll talk about Brendan Bottcher in a little bit, but during the Alberta finals, I think it was Don Landry was saying, after every shot, Brendan Bottcher's like, okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Pretty good.
That's all right. That's good. Oh, we can do.
Not
we can
bad.
Use that. Yeah, it's never like, oh, that's a disaster. Like you have to, over the course of, if they make it to the final and win, it's a 10-day event.
Right.
For them.
It's a long.
It's super long, and
long
so
road.
they are going to have to be more positive than what we've seen them. I think to sustain it through the weeks. But if they can do that. They're super talented and certainly capable of winning.
Yeah, and they're also going to have to take care of business in the games that they should win. So they're in the pool with Yukon and Northwest Territories, as well as New Brunswick. And Jim Grattan, Jimmy the Kid,
love
is a tough out.
Yeah.
And if wildcard is, in their head a bit, I'm not sure exactly when they play them. But if they play them and they're like, have just come off a loss, they've got to be able to get their mind right just to be able to get into it right away. You know what I mean?
For sure, yeah. So whoever makes it in, the first game will be against Saskatchewan and Matt Dunstone on Saturday night. That'll be kind of interesting to see certainly how that one plays out. And then they'll have a quick turnaround to play Yukon the next morning. So you're going to want to come out, get that win. That would be the only game that they play on Sunday as well, the Northwest Territories. So, Saskatchewan, Yukon, Northwest Territories, whoever it is, potentially could get off to a nice roll there.
Yeah, potentially. So that's what they're going to have to do if they want to succeed over the course of the week, right? Is put the bad shots behind them, focus on the positive, feed the positive, man.
Feed it.
It's all good.
Yeah.
And try to gain momentum that way.
For sure.
They're definitely capable. So
yeah. So let's talk about the rest of that pool. We'll go in order of rankings. We'll start with John Epping here in Pool A. Team Ontario, ranked number 2 in the country. They were ranked number 1 for a while and have ceded that position to Brad Jacobs. This is John Epping's, I want to say, 3rd time in the Brier, but I will check that. And it's a team, Scott, that the thing about John Epping has always been he'll get himself into trouble with crazy shots and he'll get himself out of trouble with crazy shots. I think we've seen a more under control John Epping now. I want to give some credit to Ryan Fry for that. Like, Ryan Fry has very strong opinions of what to do, but he's been really good, I've noticed, in the games I've watched with them, of presenting options. And when John Epping says, I see this, he immediately will go, okay, like, where do we need to put the broom? What do you need to throw? And it's not to say that, in the past, like that Matt Camp is incapable of that, but Ryan Fry is so good at recognizing when John Epping wants to throw a certain shot, switching the focus from what should the shot be to how do we now make the shot. That's really impressive. And when you have somebody like Lang on the team who really likes to discuss the options, and Lang's really good at presenting options.
Sure.
Fry is great at, once the decision's made, let's immediately shift to execution. And that's the thing that I've really noticed in the games of theirs this year that I've watched, is Fry has forced them to talk about execution a lot more. And as a result, some of those higher degree of difficulty shots he's making. And there was one point during the Continental Cup, which I know isn't the greatest barometer for this, but Fry was like, it was like an angle run. And Fry was like, no, I think we can do this. And John's like, no, I see this. And Fry just goes, okay. And then the next 45 seconds was all about how do we make this? And they made it perfectly. So that's the sort of thing that is an adjustment on the team that really has been beneficial. And going into a week like this, where you're going to have to make a lot of bailout shots potentially, to have somebody who knows how to switch the focus from what to how, I think that's a real benefit for them.
Yeah, and having Brent Lang and Matt Cam on the team, both guys who have contributed a lot of strategy to their teams in the past, respectively, having somebody who knows, okay, we need to stop talking, we need to just start making now. I'll correct you, Sean. It's John Epping's second official Brier. Lost the wild card game last year.
Ah, yes, of course.
So that doesn't count as a Brier appearance.
It should.
Should it?
Why not?
You had your chance. You had 2 chances to get into the field.
That's true. That is true. And according to the Curling Canada website, the event does start on Saturday. That's right. And the wildcard game is free, so it's not even like they're making ticket money on it. That's true.
Yeah. So this team, they've been playing really well all fall. We're ranked number 1 for a while, as you mentioned. Made it to at least 2, I think, Grand Slam finals. They might have won one. And they're definitely a threat to win this event.
Yeah, no question. Of course, they did win the Canada Cup back in December.
That's the one I'm thinking
so
of.
a big win for them already on this season. And I'll also just say, completely tangentially or unrelatedly, an interesting story too about John Epping that came out this week about his coming out.
Oh, yes.
Really cool story. So I commend that to people.
Yeah, I'm not going to have a fun fact for every team, Sean.
Okay.
But I will point out in the media guide, it says that Brent Lang is 40.
Okay.
And was born December 10th, 1978.
Wow.
So I'm no mathematician.
Yeah. So he has the Friends aging thing, where you
stop at 40.
Yeah,
right?
You have one birthday over 3 years.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah.
Okay. So Team Wildcard would be the second-ranked team in the pool. So let's move down to the defending champions, somewhat surprisingly ranked 6th in this. So the seedings were based off of the CTRS points as of December 31st. 2019, so it doesn't take into account any of the provincial playdowns for which you get points in some provinces, and the Grand Slam that took place in January as well. But Kevin Cooey and the defending champions are ranked 6th in this field. Kind of surprising for that team, but part of that is schedule and how much you play or not play in some cases. But as we've learned from the commercial, Scott, Kevin Cooey is very relaxed.
Kevin Cooey is relaxed, Sean. I just did a Control F in the Curling Canada media guide and typed Kevin Cooey.
He's in there like 80,000 times.
72 references to Kevin Cooey in this. That's how many times he's won, because they put in who the skip was whenever you win. Just an outstanding player. This guy, he seems to be properly aged based on his birthday there. But yeah, what can we say about this team? They've got to be a favorite. Yep. They were really great last year in winning.
Yeah.
And like you said, maybe slowed down a bit this year, knowing that they had the invitation to the Brier. Yep. Played a bit. I believe they might have played in the an event hosted by Kevin Cooey out in Calgary a couple of weeks ago.
It was it was actually last weekend.
Last weekend?
That it was sort of this invitational and
At the Glencoe Club?
Yeah, it was sort of, I think it was a charitable thing. I think that they played in, and some of the lineups in that were a little all over the place. Glenn Howard played in it, but none of Glenn Howard's team played in it.
Okay.
So they brought out some different folks. John Morris was there.
Kind of like a pro-am style,
Well,
maybe?
no, there was no AMs.
Oh.
Just pros. Kirk Myers went and played in it as well as part of Team Howard. So an event there. They played in that. I don't think that officially counts in terms of their record. Only 52 games this year for the team compared to last year, Scott. Now, I know it's a full season, and it would include Champions Cup and the World Championship and all that. But last year, overall, they played 114.
Yeah.
So even if they win this week, you're not going to get to that level. So definitely slowing down this year. And only 31 and 21. So in terms of winning percentage, a little less than what you would expect for Kevin Cooey. Again, that speaks to how good this team really is.
Yeah, and BJ Neufeld was off for a while there in the fall with the birth of his daughter.
Yep.
Just about to happen, and just afterwards, So, yeah, you're playing with spares is always a little tougher, and
For sure.
I mean, they get great spares to play, but
Yeah.
you'd think that by now they're all ready to go, ready to put together a big run.
Yeah, you'd
Here
think
is
so.
Team
Yeah,
Canada.
yeah, you're right. The absence of BJ in the fall was pretty big for them, but they made one final, which was the Canada Cup, which of course they lost to John Epping. Made the playoffs at the National right after that, lose in the quarterfinals. Did make the playoffs at the Canadian Open there in January, but yeah, it's Kevin Cooey.
Yeah.
So
You're not going to discount Team Cooey for any reason.
No. Now, moving on then to Team Saskatchewan, Matt Dunstone. I said earlier, Scott, I could see this team winning. This is a fun team, an intense team, a team with the biggest disparity in height between the third and the skip.
Yeah, I think so.
Which makes for fun television when you see them standing side by side. And I don't know, it's a team that, they lost last year in the Saskatchewan final to Kirk Myers, but you look at their resume, they won a Grand Slam this year, they won a Curling World Cup event last year. They have good results. They go toe-to-toe with these top teams. Matt Dunstone is clearly not scared of anybody.
No.
Neither is Braden Muscowie, and they are a team that, even though they have never won a Brier, any of them, a lot of experience in Briers, right? Kidby has played in a ton of them too. So is Schneider. Only one.
One.
Oh, excuse me. I would have thought he played in more. Who did he play that with?
He played with Adam Casey out of Saskatchewan.
That was his only one.
That was his only
Interesting.
one.
But Catlin Schneider has only played in one as well.
Well, that seems wrong.
Yeah, that can't be right.
Because he played with Jim Cotter that year as well. So,
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll fact check
How's
the
this?
media guide.
It's
some
nobody's.
other
It's
time.
nobody's first time at this
It's
event.
nobody's first
right?
time,
And
that's
and
right.
even if it's only one Brier, they've played in trials as well, right? So no one's going to be scared of anything there. And I think if this is a team that gets on a roll, that they could be dangerous. They play wild card in that first game. If you can get that win there, get your week off to a good start, you'll be in position potentially to go on a bit of a run. New Brunswick in the second game.
Yep.
That's the only game that day. And then you get BC and then the Northwest Territories. So you could potentially, you get that wild card game, could potentially get some momentum.
Yeah, you could be 3-1, 4-0 there, coming down to your games against Ontario and Canada, and then you finish up with the Yukon. So, yeah, if they can put themselves in a good position in those first 4 games, then you definitely got a chance to go forward.
No question. So, I look forward to seeing them. I think there'll be a lot of green in the crowd, too. Because, Scott, there always is.
Yeah, there always is. Do any of your Saskatchewan contacts have plans to go down to the event and perhaps sport their green?
I would be stunned if Dean Moser is not wearing green on the weekend.
Okay. Dean will be there.
He will.
Cheering on Team Saskatchewan. Good on.
Yeah,
Good
so excited to see Saskatchewan. Let's move on. Jim Cotter and his team representing British Columbia in a game in the BC final that Tyler Tardy, man. I mean, Jim Cotter, I hope they enjoyed this week because based on the trend lines, Tyler Tardy is coming. And,
He sure is,
you know, it's going to be a battle out there in BC for the next couple of years. And Jim Cotter and his team, they're going to be a tough out for Tyler Tardy, or Tyler Tardy's going to be a tough out for them. But that was a fun game out there in the BC final. And it's always fun to see Jim Cotter at this. He is as cool a customer as you can get. I think, whenever I think of Jim Cotter, I think of John Morris when John Morris was on that team. And John Morris has played with arguably the best player ever. And he said that he's never played with anybody as calm as Jim Cotter.
As Jim Cotter, yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm still not convinced that Jim Cotter has a heartbeat, but he's a living, breathing human being, so he must.
He must, yeah. So Sean, Jim Cotter's record without John Morris at this event is shockingly not that great.
I don't find it that shocking. John Morris is great.
Well, John Morris is great, but considering we think, oh yeah, Jim Cotter comes and he's pretty good. Like, he can make the playoffs. So 2019, 4-7.
Yeah.
2017, he was 7-4 with John Morris. 2016, he was 3-8 without John Morris, and 5-6. With John Morris in 2014, they got the silver medal at 10-3.
Yep.
And then 4-7 on his own, 4-7 on his own. He was 8-5 with Bob Ursel skipping and him throwing fourth rocks. So,
Oh yeah.
so in this, he throws the fourth rocks, but he does not skip. Steve Laycock will
Yep.
be the skip, which seems to be his sweet spot, right?
Yes.
That's where he thrives a bit. I just, we'll wait to see how the week plays out, but the history tells me that sans John Morris, we could see this BC team miss the playoffs.
It's certainly possible.
Or miss the championship pool even.
I think that's a tougher route, or I'd be more surprised to if that were to happen.
Well, we've got 3 teams ahead, or 4 teams ahead already.
Yeah, I think when you get to the next team, I don't obviously want to discount them, but
Well, they're the 5th team that we
sorry,
talked
yeah,
about,
the
right?
5th team. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, championship pool might be tough. Sorry, I forgot that we had the wild card in there.
That's right.
You're right. It could be tough. I think if they win against the 3 teams below them, then they just have to potentially eke out one more.
Beat one more team
To get into a tie break, which they're capable of doing. Overall on the season, they're 34-18. The hammer efficiency, though, down at 35%, which in this field is not going to be good enough.
No.
They're going to have to pick up that and convert more often with the hammer.
Into the 40s, I think will be important in this pool.
Yeah, but a pretty good steal efficiency combined with the force efficiency, too. So they're obviously playing games that are pretty junky and coming down to last stones in each end. So we'll see how that breaks out for Jim Cotter. Yeah, it's going to be an uphill climb for them, though, I should say. But they have to take care of the next 3 teams.
That's right.
In order to do that, the next is the one, the only, the ageless Jimmy the Kid.
Yeah, Jimmy the Kid. They're the kind of team that we've seen get off to a slow start at the Brier and then pick it up as the week goes on.
Yep.
And this pool format seems to disadvantage those kinds of teams.
For sure.
We just saw Andrea Crawford from New Brunswick reel off 4 straight wins after losing her first 3, only to then lose out in a playoff. But it's the kind of thing where the New Brunswick team, takes a couple of days to get used to the ice and get used to everything. And when they do, they can play with anybody. So they've got early games against Yukon and Saskatchewan. Those are the kind of games that they're going to need to get.
Yes, no question.
Sure, against Cooey, against John Epping, you don't really expect them to win. But it's those games, Saskatchewan and BC, if they can beat one or both of those teams,
Yep.
Hopefully both, it sets them up to maybe push at the championship pool. But this isn't a team that's gonna make the playoffs.
No, it very unlikely. The one big event that they played in this year was the Tour Challenge Tier 2 event. They went 1-3 there, did not make the playoffs. The one win was against Jamie Murphy, but lost to Tanner Horgan, Rich Ruonen. So, teams that are not on the level of the top teams in this pool. So, yeah,
Right.
it certainly is going to be tough for Jimmy. But, that shot he made in the 10th end of the New Brunswick final to win, I know it's on that famously straight New Brunswick ice or tough New Brunswick ice. But if he makes shots like that, where he had to sort of come around a rock in the top 4 foot and me in the back 4, and he makes it, and Team Roach can't convert their shot because he just couldn't. He put it
in a spot that he couldn't really do anything.
Yeah, it was one of those shots where if you walked the stone down, you would have put it where it ended up. And he's so good. He's been around so long that if he's able to bail the team out here and there, could cause some trouble for some teams.
Yeah, that's the kind of player he is, right? And
Yeah.
you do expect on his skill alone, they can come up and maybe, give one of these teams a game
Yeah.
and, maybe lose in the 10th end on a last rock, but really push one of these top teams.
Yeah.
And if he can come out on the right side and eke out a win or two, then that'd be all great.
Yeah, and a team that doesn't play that much, 23-11 on the season going into this. So, yeah, they're going to have to get their legs under them a little bit. Next team up, though, Thomas Scoffin and his team out of Yukon. We saw them at the Brier last year, or we certainly saw Thomas last year. We were very big on Thomas Scoffin, Scott, last year. I went back and I just looked at the description of our post-Brier episode, and we talked about how Team Yukon was a lot of fun.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they were a lot of fun. Last year, Thomas Scoffin wasn't on the ice for Yukon.
Oh, excuse me. Who was it?
Bob Smallwood, maybe?
Okay.
But he's back.
He's been in the Brier.
Yeah, 2018 in Regina.
Yes.
Went 2-6 as the Yukon skip.
Yes. Tough showing.
Yeah, I guess they counted that seeding pool game.
Yeah, those seeding pool games were fun.
Yeah. But yeah, like Thomas Scoffin, we've seen him at tons of Canadian juniors. Looking here, he's played at 7 under 21 curling championships for Yukon. Obviously, he went to the University of Alberta as well, and I think he played for the Golden Bears there. Yeah, he won a gold medal in 2015. Hey, this media guide is really good.
It is good.
Go check it out.
Read the media guide.
Yeah, it's not just for media. You can read it too on the Curling Canada website. So he's got with him quite a young team. He's 25. The youngest on the team is 22. Everybody else sort of in between. And oh my man, this guy has a wife and a son, and he's 25. Oh
Yeah.
boy, what have I done with my life? I'm sitting here talking about curling. That's
He
what's
lives
up.
in Yukon. You can't really go out much, so you gotta. What are you gonna do?
Gotta entertain yourself, right? Yeah. So a young team. Nobody else, I don't think, has been to the Brier on this team, so it'll be a first-time showing. Hopefully, they'll like get some experience, have some fun, maybe accomplish something like the Nunavut women accomplished and win a game, maybe 2.
Yeah.
That's what you can expect.
I think so, yeah. And, a couple of years ago, sorry, I thought it was last year, but a couple of years ago with Thomas Scoffin, his dad was on that team, I remember.
Yeah,
right. It was sort of an older team. So this year, as you say, rejigging it, having younger players with him, and given the success he's had at other levels, we talked about it with what happens if Carrie Galusha decides not to play anymore. Is there anyone behind her in the Northwest Territories on the women's side? This is a team that could be like a Carrie Galusha or a Jamie Cooey for Yukon, right? A player who is there every year, is going to play some tough games, is going to give people trouble, is going to nip some people throughout the event and get some good wins. That's what these guys could be. Perhaps even more than that, because Thomas Scoffin's pedigree as a young player is so high, right? That University of Alberta program is really good.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Botcher went through it. Carson Sturmey this is last
now,
year
yeah.
in it. Right? It's turned out some really top-notch players. So
Yeah.
who knows? This week it's going to be tough, of course, but I wouldn't sleep on them, I should say, to win a couple games.
Yeah, and looking at his results as a junior, he first went when he was 13 years old.
Right.
Representing Yukon. Got better every year that he was there, to the point where in 2013 he represented Alberta as he was playing, going to school down there.
Yeah.
And got the silver medal, losing to Matt Dunstone.
Right.
So,
And part of that is going to be teammates too.
Sure,
right,
but
who you can take with you.
But you see like a progression as the Yukon skip. He finished 7-5 the year before as the Yukon skip. So like constantly improving. Hopefully we can get that kind of constant improvement out of him, seeing him at multiple Briers in a row. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
You bring the same squad, you get more experience, and you go from there.
No question. So let's, Scott, talk about the final team in Pool A. The one, the only, the legendary Jamie Cooey in the Northwest Territories. He is back for another rodeo at the Brier. Fan favorite, I think. Certainly with a certain segment of the fans. He's a favorite. Pretty good Twitter follow as well.
Yeah.
He's a fun guy. He just loves to play, and he enjoys the experience of all the players. Of all 64 players who will be in the main field, I feel very comfortable in saying that Jamie Cooey will be the most frequent visitor to the patch for the week. He really does just seem to enjoy the experience, enjoy being around the game, being around the fans. He really soaks it in, makes the most out of it every time. He wants to win. There is no question about that. He wants to win the games that he plays in when he's on the sheet. But he also wants to enjoy the experience. And I think fans around the event, when you see him, really latch on to that. And I don't know when he's playing his brother. I hope it's early, that they can put it on, because I know it's tough for Fred, but I love those Fred. He's got the two flags, and at the end of every end, he's waving whichever flag is scored. I love that so much, and it's fun to see.
It's
right?
really fun to see. Yeah, that's Sunday afternoon.
Okay, that could be the TV game.
So
then,
yeah,
early
we could see a NWT on TV, which would be pretty nice. For sure. He's got a young team with him, as he did last year, bringing a pretty young team. He's got David Aho, Shadrach McLeod, and Cole Parsons.
We've seen David Aho before.
Yeah, I think all three of them were with him last year. The second McLeod played 3 games as an alternate for their team. And Matt Ing, who's their alternate this year, played 3 games last year too. So it seems like he's trying to groom the next wave of new Northwest Territories talent, and you hope that he's got a competitive game with his brother, and that they win 1 or 2.
Yeah, I think so, and I think they'd probably be happy with that too,
and that he gets the record for most beers crushed in the week.
But he'd be breaking his own record.
Yeah, true.
On that one. I also say, I didn't know this. I just Googled Fred Cooey. He was a politician there in the Northwest Territories. He was a member of the Legislative Assembly from 1991 to 1995.
Good.
So there you go. So that's Pool A, Ontario Wildcard Canada, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, New Brunswick, Yukon, and the Northwest Territories. I think it's not quite as top-heavy as Pool B. I think Pool B has a very clear 3.
Yeah.
A pretty clear 4, and then the other teams.
Yeah,
which pains me to say.
I think Pool A has a pretty clear 2.
Yeah.
And then the next 3. So yeah,
I agree.
I'd agree.
Yeah. So let's move over to Pool B. The top-ranked team in the country as of December 31st, which only got bigger after they won the Grand Slam in January, I can only imagine.
Yeah, the Open?
Yeah. The formerly Canadian Open, which we will talk about at some point. Northern Ontario, Brad Jacobs and his team. This is a squad that, of course, gold medalists. They've won a Brier before, and they've lost Briers in finals in some of the toughest circumstances you can imagine. The Pat Simmons shot, which I know I talk about a lot on the show, but it's one of my favorite shots that he makes, and I'm still not entirely sure how Carter Rycroft didn't burn it. We came really close to burning that rock in celebrating the shot, and it
Has his broom come down yet? Might be stuck in the rafters.
Yeah, when they tear down the Saddle Dome, they'll have to go up and get the broom out and put it in the Canada Sports Hall of Fame or something.
Mm-hmm.
But so they've been there. We talked about they've been in the playoffs so often, but they just haven't been able to make it over that hump to win since the Olympic gold medal, which now we're talking about 6 years.
Yeah.
Since they won that in 2014. And for a team this good, I know now with the lineup change, that is a long time to go without winning a Brier. I have to say, like, for a normal human being to say you haven't won a Brier in 6 years, you'd be like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Right? But for Brad Jacobs, for how good he is, it is kind of surprising, and for how they've been in it. It's not like they've gone and had bad results. They've been in it. They've been there. Just haven't been able to get over the hump. Mm-hmm. Of course, Mark Kennedy on board, winning the Canada Cup last year, winning 3 consecutive Grand Slams this year. I mean, I praised Ryan Fry because I think he's been really good for that Epping team. Mark Kennedy he's so good.
He's the secret sauce, man. He's the elixir, the fountain of life that they needed. I mean, it's so good. They've been pretty much unstoppable.
Yeah.
This year, the Canada Cup, a rare hiccup, but there's nothing preventing this team from winning. If they don't win, I think they're going to be. It's either going to be them losing it or some other team playing above their head.
I don't know. I think Kevin Cooey on his best day and Brad Jacobs on his best day. I mean, I'd watch that. Give me a Russian best out of 7 style series of that.
Sure.
I would watch all those games. But I do think there are teams here that if Brad Jacobs is playing his best and they're playing their best, it's going to come down to pretty much whoever has last rock.
Maybe,
right?
yeah, maybe.
In the game.
Just the way that they've played this year has been so dominant.
Yeah.
In those events. And I don't know if it's his shaved head is really intimidating the other teams, if it's his death stare.
Yeah.
And it's like super creepy. Let's be real. When he slides out.
Yeah, I prefer not bald Brad Jacobs.
Yeah, and I think Brad Jacobs has the option because I don't think he's like bald like me.
No.
But
few are.
Yeah, few are. Maybe I think the beard and the bald is okay when you've got some glasses to break up the face.
Right.
And when you've got a beard and bald with no glasses, it's a little bit scary.
Right.
So anyway, regardless of that, Sean.
Yeah.
Regardless of that, we
digress.
We digress.
I think if there is a weak point on this team,
Okay.
which I don't think there is, I would suggest that if you're looking at the lineups and you're breaking it down sort of team by team, I might put somebody like Brett Gallant slightly ahead of EJ as a player by a fraction of a percentage on their best day.
Yeah.
And I might think too, I mean, it's super tough that at the lead position to Ryan Harden sometimes on those ticks when they play them hasn't been quite as efficient.
But that's like such you're so small.
I'm super nitpicking at
Yeah.
that because that's how good.
That's how
good they are.
Yeah.
Right? That
Yeah.
Ryan Harden might make 8.5 out of every tick shots.
We talked about
Right.
6 teams we thought could win this. I would be shocked if this team doesn't make the playoffs.
I agree.
Right? This team, if they don't make the playoffs, it's a huge implosion, and I think it's self-caused.
Yeah,
if that happens.
and we saw that at the Roar of the Rings in 2018. That was self-caused.
Right.
And Brad Jacobs was way into his head. They didn't show it on the broadcast. I'm kind of glad they didn't.
Yeah.
For Brad Jacobs' sake. But he had a meltdown.
Yeah.
After he gave up a steal at one point, where he took his gripper and just went to town on his thigh. Like he just was sort of smacking himself.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing that you I don't think we'll see from them with Mark Kennedy on the team.
Yeah, I think their head is they're sort of how there's a Drake song, In My Feelings?
Yeah.
I don't think he's so much in his feelings anymore.
No, and I think too, they're not with Kingsbury anymore, but after Kingsbury, after the Olympics, and he left Team Home and they parted ways, that they worked with Kingsbury for a year, and that's what Kingsbury does.
Yeah.
He's right, and I think he was really good for them, from all accounts. That puts them in a better position to win, and even just the little things, like a couple years ago, picking Tanner Horgan to come with them. I don't think 2015-16 Brad Jacobs does that.
No, I agree.
Pick a young player who almost beat him to go with them, right? When they had Caleb with them for a while, and then obviously the situation, or I don't think it was Caleb, actually, it was another player. But, there was the doping situation with the like those sorts of things. That's not happening with this team anymore. It's tapping players with about knees on the ice. Like that stuff
That's
isn't
not
happening with this team anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun to see that talent is now just going to speak for itself, hopefully. So a lot of fun to see them this week and see how they play. Another team in this pool is the two-time finalist. Defending finalist? I don't know. Brendan Bottcher and his team, they have lost the last two finals at a Brier. Last year, of course, to Kevin Cooey on a shot that if it curls a millimeter more, we're talking about Brendan Bottcher as the Canadian champion.
Yeah.
And Cooey's going to Cooey, so he makes the shot. But this is a team, Scott, that, I said it earlier, in terms of just being positive, being fun, of what I look for in a TV team. This is kind of it, right? I like the positivity of it.
Yeah.
Really fun. But then I also like Darren has a Richard Hart style call where he sort of panic laughs when he's doing it. Well, no. Like it's not as sort of jarring as some other panicky type calls I find.
Okay.
And Darren Moulding has relaxed over the past few years, right? I think Brendan Bottcher has rubbed off on Darren Moulding.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more of a chill, relaxing situation. We saw even, I think it was at the Alberta, I don't know if it was the final or the semifinal there, where Darren Moulding, he had cut himself somehow. I'm not sure how. It was sort of bleeding a bit. And he was making jokes about whether or not you could see the blood on his shirt on TV and stuff like that sort of stuff, right? It's just a looser team.
Yeah.
And
he's like super aware.
Yeah, he knows what's going on,
Yeah.
right? He runs their social media, which is, I think, the best team social media in the country.
It is one of the best.
As well.
Yeah.
So, and then you have, Thiessen. Thiessen and Hebert are probably toe-to-toe for the best sweepers in the country right now, if not in the world.
Yeah.
And then Carrick Martin is just, because if you grow up in that household, you have a really good mind for the sport.
Yeah.
So all around, it's a great team. That's how you get to 2 consecutive Brier finals. And again, this field is so deep. You can't begrudge them if they don't make it back to a final. But also, you wouldn't be surprised to see them pull this one out.
No, I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see them pull it out. I think what you said earlier about learning from losing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you said that today.
I
or
said
if you
that on the
yesterday
on the episode about
your
the
words.
Scotties.
Your words, Sean, they just stick in my mind. But this team has learned a lot from the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And from their start, sort of in men's curling, where they weren't so great and had to go through some hardships.
Yeah. Well, I believe his first time there, 3-8.
3-8, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if Darren was with them at that time, but anyway.
No, it was new because he was playing with Simmons. Pat Simmons was on the team early. Didn't quite work out. Darren stepped in, I believe, late in that season. So they were just starting to work together, and that's when Darren was still a little more wound up about it.
That's right. Yes.
Sort of within the game. So, working to this. It's a really good example. We talked about it yesterday with Carrie Anderson a bit too. That and Jennifer Jones for that matter. Teams need to progress.
Yeah.
Right. The first few events, even the first season you play with a team, they're not a finished product. Yeah. And certainly we've seen that with the Brendan Bottcher team, that it takes time to grow, it takes time to progress, to get to a point where you're comfortable with each other. being critical when you need to be critical, being supportive when you need to be supportive, knowing what the other players need, and they seem to be in a really good place. That final, both games on Sunday of the Alberta played out. If we get a championship Sunday at the Brier that was as good as the Alberta championship day,
Yeah, we'll take that.
I'll take that for sure. Like, Ted Appelman was on his game in the semifinal, and Brendan Bottcher was able to beat him. And Karsten Sturmey came out and played a fantastic game in the final. And if we get that caliber of curling at the Brier, I'll be thrilled. But it also speaks to what Brendan Bottcher and that team had to go through to get here, playing top-level competition and being up to the task.
Yeah, for sure. I think this team will be able to do it. And Sean, a shout out to Brendan Bottcher, who recently got engaged.
Oh, very exciting!
So big time congratulations to him and his fiance. So, maybe as a newly engaged man, he will be able to bring his curling to a new level. I don't know. I've never been engaged. I don't know if maybe it gives you some sort of
makes you more relaxed,
more confidence.
Gives you superpowers.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see, right?
We'll see what. Yeah,
I mean, it didn't work for 2 years while he wasn't engaged. So
I mean, 2 finals is pretty good.
Yeah, but maybe an engagement equals a finals win.
Finals win, yeah. Progression, yeah. You're moving on up.
Yeah, like you say, progression as a team.
Moving on up. So well, congratulations to Brendan Bottcher. I believe his wife to be now.
Yeah.
I believe a real estate agent. I want to say out there in Edmonton. Well.
Bobby Sauter.
Yeah, I believe sold a couple curlers have tweeted about buying their homes with her. So
well, it seems like a bit of a common name, so I'm.
So if you tweet it, you're not gonna or if you Google it, you're not gonna get an immediate response.
Yeah, my Google has not been good.
Yeah, so we'll move on to the next team. That was a lot of Brendan Bottcher talk. The next team, of course, Brad Gushue. We don't have to talk as much about Brad Gushue because they're really good. They've won good. 2 Briers. This configuration is great. I feel like I'm sort of glowing about everybody, but I really, really like Mark there at the third position. We saw for years and years and years. I think Mark first. I think he took a step back, and then he was out in Winnipeg playing with Jeff Stoughton.
Played lead, I think, for Stoughton.
Right. Yeah. And because John Meade was on that team.
Yeah.
That team was so good.
Imagine that, eh?
And John Meade and Mark. And what you see with this team, especially with Mark and Brad at the back end, just so much familiarity with each other, so much comfort. I generally dislike front end players coming down to the other end, but the way Brett Glant does it kind of works because he only gets involved in the conversation if he needs to or if he's asked to. And then once Brad starts to go up the ice, Brett and Mark will talk about weight and line and all that stuff. And it does feel like, Jeff is in that the Don McEwen role of like, just don't say anything.
Right.
But, he goes down. Like, Jeff's really good about weight and knows what's going on too. So I think it's kind of works well for this team to have one player at the hack waiting so that when Brad gets down, he can
talk to him,
get some feedback. And then when Brett gets back, they can sort of confirm and make sure all 4 players are on the same page.
Yeah.
Because we see it a lot where, well, generally what happens is both front end players are at the other end. But by Brett going down, he has the chance to talk with Mark, and it's all 4 people when Brad kicks out of the hack, knowing what they expect. So I think that's for as much as I generally hate it, and I hope no club team anywhere ever recreates this strategy, I think it really works well for this team.
Yeah, it's sort of like Brett is the captain of the front end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think he times rocks from the other team as they're going down, so he's sliding with it and timing it anyway, and then he's got such a great pedigree as a skip of his own right.
Yeah.
That
world junior champion?
Yeah.
Or just Canadian champion?
I think world junior champion. You know what? The media guide will tell me. But that he's sort of giving his input on strategy while at the same time learning strategy from Gushue, and sort of they're all coming together. And like you say, they're just a great team. Jeff Walker is the kind of guy that, yeah, he's quiet, but when he says something, it's one of those things that you got to listen to,
Yes.
right? So really good roles for all these players. And, yeah, I mean, this team, maybe they've had a bit of a down year. They were 2 years in a row Canadian champions and one world championship in there. That's a lot of games to play.
Yep.
And, Brad has talked about his knee giving him some problems, his hip and stuff. So, you got to take some time and get back. But if they put together a great week, they're as good, if not better, than anyone.
Yeah, no question. So just Brett Gallant lost the 2009 World Junior Final, but he is the all-time winningest skip at the Canadian Juniors with 48 wins.
Wow.
Representing Prince Edward Island, of course.
Yeah, he did. He had five juniors, 5 Canadian juniors. So
That he played in?
No, I'm looking at Adam Casey's number. I'm searching Brett Gallant.
Brett
It's
Gallant
giving
played
me
in
Adam
6.
Casey.
He played in 6, won once.
Wow.
So
See,
very
again,
impressive.
that getting better over time, right?
Yeah,
So-
no question. So definitely a top-notch competitor there in Brad Gushu. And as always at the Scotties, or at the Brier, Scott, we will get to see the Gushu girls.
The Gushu girls.
Yeah, they always make the trip out.
Yeah, the Brad's daughters. Is that who you mean?
No, it's 4 fans who are the Gushu girls. It's 5 of them, and one of them's the G, one of them's the U, the first U.
Yeah.
One of them's the S-H-U-E.
So
I guess
there's
that's
6.
6 letters, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Gushu girls.
Oh, so they'll be there.
Yeah,
Maybe I'll get an interview with them.
there you go. Or at least a photo.
Hey, quick age guess on how old Jules Ocher is.
76.
Wow, 75. Pretty close.
Yeah. He's been around forever.
Yeah. He doesn't look 75, but
Well, he looks the same way he looked in 1994.
yeah.
So who knows how old he is.
There you go. Ageless wonder.
Speaking of ageless wonders, Jason Gunlison,
Hey,
who also feels like he's been around forever, but is like 30 or something. Like he's not very old. Representing Manitoba, first win for them. We talked yesterday about how excited a lot of people in the curling community are for Carrie Anerson and that team for winning the Scotties. I think the Jason Gunlison Manitoba win was almost on par in terms of universal support for the team. Jason Gunlison seems to be just a beloved figure in this community, in the sport. People love him. We love him.
Yep.
Him coaching Botcher at the 2018 trials is something that I reference pretty much every game I play.
Yeah.
It's an incredible strategy discussion, scoreboard management discussion, and he is a guy that is very open about what their effort is, what their strategy is. They're going to try things that are unconventional. They're really into the analytics. They are going to rely on the big weight, especially him late in ends, because he can whip it down the ice, and they're going to have to be super precise in this field. I think they benefit from the pool a little bit. And we talked about there's the top 3 of Jacobs, Botcher, Gushu, and then there's, at least in pedigree, a dip to Gunlison, but then there's a dip below that, again, in terms of pedigree. So, top to bottom, a very talented team. Adam Casey has represented every province, and it's something that I hope that, Gunner's been around these events, certainly, but it is a different experience when you play, and Casey's skipped in it too. So I hope that, Gunner can lean on Casey for what it's like, that he's going in prepared.
Yeah, and I think like it's going to be a super fun week for them as a team. Obviously, they're going to try to win. They always do. But what's interesting about them is they sort of try things that you're like, what? Why are you doing that?
Right.
And it's because they've said, us against this team, this team does this well, so we're going to try to counteract that.
Sure.
Kind of thing. So pretty cool. They open with a game against Brad Gushu,
Okay.
which, is...
It could be a good draw, though. We talk about it all the time where, those first games, teams are still trying to figure out the ice, especially if it's snowing. over Thursday, Friday in Kingston. There, or raining, and there's moisture.
Could be a bit humid.
It could be humid. It could be tough, and the conditions could change from practice on Friday into Saturday. So we talk about it a lot that if you're a team that is playing somebody who's higher ranked than you, a team that at least fans would not expect you to beat, you probably want to play them on that first draw.
Yeah. Maybe you're right there. And then I'm looking at their last 2 days of the event. They finished PEI, Nunavut, Nova Scotia. So even if they're 2-2, 1-3, they might get those last 3 and surprise you a bit.
Yes.
What's you got a smile on your face?
I do have a smile on my face. In the media guide, Jason Gunlisson is listed as being 35 years old, which the math checks out on that.
Okay.
That he is 35 years old. How many years do you think it has Jason Gunlisson listed as having curled?
Jason Gunlickson has curled 36 years.
That's what it says. So he's 35 years old and has curled for 36 years.
Who does this fact checking? Is this Al?
This is great.
Oh,
this is absolutely amazing. That is incredible. I am putting that on Instagram. That is amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty. Good,
I will cut this and put it up. Also, I didn't know this. Married to Teresa Cannon.
Yeah.
Great player in her own right. So certainly a good curling family there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think with this team, they're gonna be fun to watch. They're gonna get a couple TV games for sure. I think they should be in this pool a safe-ish bet for that championship pool. But let's not sleep on the next team, Jamie Murphy.
Sean, Game of Stones podcast does not sleep on Jamie Murphy.
No, we never would do that to our dear friend Jamie Murphy. I like watching Jamie Murphy play. I really do. He has sort of like a half tuck delivery.
Yeah.
He's a player who is kind of like Grattan, and that this is really where we see them. Their season really feels to be designed around getting to this event, and they've been competitive in the past. Like they've given teams trouble. They've made it. I believe they've made it into the championship pool in this format. But please do correct me if I'm wrong on that. And it's again just a team that I like to watch and I root for because they don't really have that much of a pedigree. And yeah, so 2018 did make it in that championship pool out there in Regina.
Yeah, and he's got Paul Fleming coming in to play third with him. He played with him again in 2018, similar way, but Paul Fleming is one of these guys that's sort of been around. He played with Mark Dacey, played with Sean Adams out of Nova Scotia, so a well-traveled curler.
Yes.
In Nova Scotia circles. And yeah, this is one of those teams. Sean, do you think that Jamie Murphy and Jamie Cooey, if you looked at pictures of them side by side,
they're very similar.
They could be brothers, right?
They're very similar looking, yeah.
Yeah, except Jamie Murphy. Let's not sleep on Jamie Murphy's got better hair. Meaning that he's got hair. So yeah, I think this is where the sort of drop off happens. Gunlickson and Murphy, you could see them being in a similar range.
Yep.
But you'd give Gunlickson the edge for sure.
I think so, yeah. So but it's fun. I mean, I love when Jamie Murphy's there. I hope he gets a TV game at some point in the week. Maybe that game against Gunlickson, if they're sort of tight, if it's like, I don't know, when do they play? Did you say when they play each other? Like, if they're both like 2-2 or something, or because that could be that game for that fourth spot.
Jamie Murphy and Manitoba?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the last game of the draw.
Okay.
So, if there's something on the line, we could see it.
All right, so let's move on to Team Quebec, and an all-rookie team, a very young all-rookie team, skipped by Alec Bedard. This was the 2018 team that represented Quebec at the Juniors Championship. They went 5-5 together as a team. All of them first time at a Brier, all either 21, 22, 23 years old. So a young team here, and a bit of a change in the guard over in Quebec, of course, with Jean-Michel Menard hanging it up after 2 years ago. So, you hate to put pressure on a team and say, this could be the new team that represents Quebec all the time. But it's always fun to see new players at this event. Don't really have much of a book on these guys other than the 5-5 at the juniors a couple years ago. And because of that, and just we see it with rookie teams all the time. We saw it with Laura Walker at the Scotties a couple weeks ago, where it's tough for new teams to come to this event. This is a longer event than anything else.
Yep.
It's longer than the juniors. It's on different conditions. At the juniors or in the clubs for some of the games versus and then in the arena. TV cameras there, the pageantry of it, of the marching in, and there's junior players that are there that are in there with you. All these little things that you don't think of, and that is the stuff that you just have to get used to. When you've not been around that environment, it's tough. So I hope these guys have a great week. If they do, I know Noémie Verreau did not win any games, but if they play as well as she did, that's good.
Yeah.
Right?
She, gave teams games. It was never a walkover.
No. Even though the score might look like it in a couple cases.
It was some taking chances and just missing at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So overall, I think that's what they can hope for. You don't expect much more. I did search on Alec Bedard. His father, Daniel Bedard, is their alternate this week. And he was the Quebec skip at the Canadian Mixed in 1999.
Okay.
At which they finished 5-6.
Pretty good.
Yeah, not bad. And but I did think for a second that he was related to Eric Bedard,
The pitcher.
the pitcher.
Yeah.
But I was wrong. I'm just being lumping last names in together.
So not much to say about this team just because we don't know much about them. But certainly, we hope they have a solid week.
You know what? Maybe this is the start of us learning about them.
Which would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here, let's move on to a team that we know a lot about, especially because we're here in Ottawa. Brian Cochrane and Prince Edward Island, and that team. Okay, fine. I don't know if we know a lot about them. I know a lot about them. How's that?
Yeah, that's
played
right.
Played against Brian Cochrane over at the Rideau Club. They are in the Cash League there, and this is the defending World Senior Curling Champions. Scott, the clean sweep last year along with Sherry Anderson.
Yeah.
And this is the first case of the residency rule being, that slippery slope that people talked about. This is the case of that. All four of these guys are Ontario residents, all born in Prince Edward Island. I believe it's all four of them. They don't have it. They're not using the import for this at all. But this is that team, and I hope they do well. I genuinely do. He has been to the Brier before, way back in 2003. I'm just so used to things happening within the last year, or last 10 years. Goes 5-6 as Team Ontario there. Went with Mark Keane back in 2015 as well as an alternate slash coach. Brian Cochrane, in my interactions with him around Ottawa, good guy, right? Fun to be around. And you do wonder if this is not the typical PEI team because so much experience playing in and around Ontario.
Right.
So you wonder about that, but at the same time, long week, the sweeping is so important, especially when you're talking about inches and quarter of inches. By the time we get later in the week, I don't know. I don't mean that. That's going to sound terrible. Like, they're old, they can't do it. But I'm 34, and
I couldn't do it.
By the end of the eighth end, I'm way more. I'm not as effective as I was in the first end.
Yeah.
I know these guys probably train harder than I do, but it's
maybe
yeah.
They're all 55 and older.
Yes. It's a great story.
Brian Cochrane wasn't born in Prince Edward Island, according to.
Oh yeah, according to the media guide, yeah, he wasn't.
So he's their import, because Ian McCauley was born there, Morgan Curry II was born in Summerside, and Mark O'Rourke is the lead, born in Charlottetown. husband of Kathy O'Rourke, who we saw
Love Kathy O'Rourke.
make that epic run in 2010 at
Kathy
the
O'Rourke. Oh my goodness.
the
One
Scotties.
of my favorite people I've ever talked to in the sport.
Yeah. So this team, when you play Brian, Sean, what is he like after the game? Game for a beer?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
feel like this is the guys that are like, oh, we're game for a beer.
But again, that's, Tuesday night cash league at the Rito Curling Club. That's
Yeah.
not at the Brier.
They're not going to win. So like,
You're right. They're not going to win. This really does. This is a great experience for these guys. You're someone like Morgan Curry. You're in your mid 50s. This is your first time at a Brier.
This just sounds fun, right?
Soak it up.
Yeah.
Really enjoy it. I think we said on the show last week. We'll say it again or yesterday. If you have questions for players, send them to us. I want to talk to Morgan Curry.
Yeah.
That's a player that I want to pull to talk about it, to talk about the experience for him.
Right. Because this is sort of like what the best that sort of a high tier recreational curler like that can aspire to.
For sure.
Right? And like Brian Cochran's better than a recreational curler, but somebody who plays in cash league, who doesn't travel much to play.
Yep.
This would be a dream to
sure.
go to the Brier, right? So it should be a lot of fun for them, especially three of them live in and around Ottawa. It's close to home. They'll probably have a good
They'll have a
cheering
good crowd
section.
there. Yeah.
So they should have fun and not win anything. So there you go.
So the final team in the field, Team Nunavut, skipped by Jake Higgs. He's been to the Canadian Mixed Championships a few times. First time at a Brier. He, born in Regina, lives in Strathroy. This is kind of curious that I'm not sure who their import is, because the third, Dave Kohlenberg, was born in Moose Jaw and lives in Yellowknife. And I'm not a geography major, but I do know that Yellowknife is not in Nunavut, and I hope that Curling Canada is aware of that fact as well. So I'm not entirely sure how this is working on the import and the import rule. The front end players both live in Iqaluit. Ed McDonald was there back in 2017 in the pre-qualifier or the relegation round, as it should have been called.
Right.
They did not make it through. Jim Nix was the skip of that team. He's been to the Canadian Mixed a few times as well. Dave Kohlenberg has actually played in the Masters. He's 64 years old here at his first Brier. And he will skip Nunavut at the 2020 Senior Championships as well. Second, Christian Smithrahan, first time at any national event. So, similar to what we talked about with Brian Cochran, but even more so for these guys. Really cool experience for them to get to go play, be in this environment. Just a couple of years ago with Dave St. Louis, I know we've said this before, but his goal was to make it to the 10th end of a game.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that this is sort of in the same realm as them. But, I mean, it's cool. Like, if I could do it, go represent a province, I would do it, and I would gladly get beat 20-0 by Brad Gushu. Like, I'd be in for that. Brad Gushu would hate it and would never want to talk to me ever again, but I would be there for the 2 hours of that.
We got to play 8 ends of this nonsense? Oh, boy. Christian Smitheram is how I would pronounce it, the second. A pilot for Canadian North, so maybe they're getting some kind of a deal on flying standby down to to Ottawa for the event. We know, talking to Dave St. Louis there a couple of years ago, that the cost of flying everyone down it was expensive. It's very expensive, right? Yeah. So hopefully these guys get it. Maybe they can pull a Laurietti and win a game or two, but I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah. Yeah, so all the best to them, and hopefully they get some coverage there. They won't get a TV game. I think that's pretty clear, but hopefully some positive coverage and some good vibes sending to Team Nunavut. So that's it. That's the 17 teams that are heading to Kingston this week to participate in the 2020 Brier. Is there anything else, Scott, that you want to talk about that you're looking forward to for this week?
Well, Sean, this will be my first Brier experience as media.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to interacting with all the fans that are there, and going to the patch, being able to watch all these games. I really love curling. I think we express that through our podcast.
Yeah.
It was tough last week. Admittedly, doing a show every night, it's fun, right? It's fun to talk about. But I was still going to work every day and feeling a little like dragging a bit by the end of the week. But this week I'll be there. I won't have to worry about work. It'll just be fun times with the Brier.
Yeah, for sure. And what I will say from being to a couple of these things as media, you want to go to all the draws, but that can be hard too, right?
Yeah.
So
it's also on TV, so there's you can take a break.
Yeah, or like show up in the fifth end or something, right? You can do that too. That's what's great about not having tickets as well. You don't feel compelled necessarily, like you want to, but you don't feel compelled to. So it's an interesting dynamic. So I'm excited for you to get to experience the behind the scenes a little bit of one of these events and everything that goes into it.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. So it should be fun from that aspect. Is there anything that you're looking forward to?
I think this field is going to be fun. I just think this is going to be, it's a loaded field. It's going to be great curling. You just hope that the ice is in good shape. Anytime that they play somewhere near a lake, there's always that discussion.
I remember the ice being quite good, though, in 2013.
It should be fine.
And the venue is really good.
Yeah.
And with the patch being in the parking lot or wherever it is, pretty solid, I'd say. Pretty solid.
Yeah, and I like, I like Eastern time zone events, too, that we live here in Ottawa. So we have 9, 2, and 7 o'clock draws this week. So an extra half hour earlier that we get will be a little nice on those night draws for the daily episodes. So loaded field here, Scott. We're time to make our picks. Same rules as always. 4 teams to make the playoffs, and then you got to pick your winner. So who you got?
Who I got? I'm going to take Brendan Botcher and get back to the playoffs. Give me John Epping. Give me Kevin Cooey. Oh, man, this is hard. And Brad Jacobs.
Okay.
I'm going to leave Gushu out of the playoffs. This is very hard to do.
Yes, it really is.
But I'm going to pick Brad Jacobs to win. They're on the roll.
Okay.
Mark Kennedy has been the key to their team succeeding, and I got to think he's what's going to get them over the top.
Okay, I think that's a pretty fair bet there. I'm going to go with Newfoundland and Labrador and Brad Gushu. I'm also going to go with Team Canada. I'm going to go with Alberta, Brendan Botcher, and Northern Ontario. I think we can get 3 teams out of that Pool B. If Northern Ontario, Alberta, and Newfoundland and Labrador all split against each other, which could happen, that they all go in 6-1 to that championship pool, that could give them a real advantage against what happens in Pool A. So I'm going to bet on the math a little bit there.
Yeah, that's the thing. I couldn't put myself in a position to take those 3 teams all out of the same pool. And
you know what? I'm going to go with, give me a bit of an upset, potentially, for the winner. I'm going to say Brendan Botcher makes it through. It's really hard to get to a final. It's really hard to get to 2 finals in a row. It's damn near impossible to get to 3 finals in a row. But why not?
Eh?
So give me Brendan Botcher to win the 2020 Brier and represent Canada at the World Championships in some far-flung locale.
Yeah, so to recap, you have Alberta winning, Newfoundland, Labrador, Canada, and Northern Ontario?
Yes.
Okay.
So the only place we differ in terms of playoffs is I have Newfoundland and Labrador. You have Team Ontario.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
And I still haven't calculated the results yet, Sean. I've been remiss in my duties over the past 24 hours.
That's okay. We'll have it by the end of the week. You have a lot of time on the media bench to figure that out.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, so as we did with the Scotties, the plan is to do daily episodes starting with the wild card game on Friday night. So we'll plan to have that dropped, anywhere from a half hour to an hour after TSN goes off the air. Scott will be in Kingston the whole time, so we'll get some action from the media bench, get the behind the scenes there, maybe some material for the curlers. As we said earlier, if you have questions for players that go beyond how's the ice doing, because that we'll cover that sort of stuff, and that comes out in the media anyway. If there's sort of specific things you want to know that are not sort of out of bounds, like reasonable questions that we can ask them in a media setting that's not like a long form interview, we're happy to do that. If there's anything that you want to know from your favorite players, or hell, from your least favorite players too. If there's somebody you don't like, we're not going to go yell at them for you, but
The question, who do you think you are, is not.
we're not gonna ask that one. We're open to stuff. I once asked Ben Hebert in a media scrum what the difference between heavy hack and easy board was. So if it's at that level of ridiculous or less ridiculous, we'll ask it. More ridiculous than that, we'll have to think about it. But yeah, if there's stuff you want us to ask, certainly let us know, and do follow along all week. It's going to be a great event, as the Scotties was a great event. This is my favorite time of year for curling, and these fields are going to be great. So very much looking forward to the Brier. So follow along all week. Google, Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify. We're on Spotify. So check us out at all those places, or wherever else you get your shows, likes, ratings, all that kind of stuff. Follow along too. Scott's going to be live tweeting a storm up from Kingston in the arena all week. So follow along at Game of Stones Pod, also on Instagram as well. And as always, you can email the show at gameofstonespodcast@gmail.com. So we'll be back with you Friday night after that wild card game, which we are looking forward to. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that insert.
Make the final.